Thank you for coming out to the Rosemont MFA in Creative Writing Class of 2016 Drop the Mic, It's All Over graduation reading. Embarking on a graduate program is no mean feat. It's a huge commitment, money, time, sweat equity, creative risk-taking. When Ray called it art, this is what I believe you're all doing. You're all making art, and you need to believe that with all your heart. It's not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of commitment, and it's something that we need in order for our culture to be better than it is sometimes. Without art, there's no beauty, and you are helping to make the world a more beautiful place. So before I start crying, I'm going to step away and let Ray take over. She can cry. All right. Thank you, and congratulations to all of you. You really will always have a really special place in my heart. Thank you.
Okay, so first up is Molly Laser. Molly came up with the idea for Owl Eyes, the young adult novel that would be her thesis, and finished the first draft back in 2003. Between then and now, she spent 4 years working as an editor at Marvel Comics and 7 years as a high school teacher, earned 2 graduate degrees, and got married.
The day of the Harvest Moon Ball, the kitchen house and the main house could not have felt further apart. In the main house, Portia and Siobhan radiated nervous energy down the halls. Greta and Peter were sent to barter for water, so they were not there to see the meals that were sent back because Siobhan claimed her stomach was too upset for her to eat. Portia did not even come to the breakfast table. Since I returned from the Vale, something had shifted, and the kitchen house no longer felt like a home. I noticed imperfections where I hadn't before, in the uneven boards on the floor, the crack in the mirror that hung on the wall next to Greta's herb shelf, and the lumpiness of the bread I took out of the oven each morning. I tried to avoid looking in the mirror, but I would always catch it in the corner of my eye as I walked by. Izella's face. My face. The one that was so hated in the house just across the field. A mix of shame and entitlement burned beneath my skin. I was not Izella, so why should I be punished for her sins? I was not Izella, so why must I wear her face? My skin practically crawled with my desire to get out of it. As I cut up the flank of a deer that had miraculously wandered into one of our pit traps, I imagined the blood that slicked my cutting board creeping over the windowsill and going outside, flowing in surreptitious veins that made their way over to infect the main house. I wish Jack hadn't gone foraging in the woods. He would inevitably come back empty-handed, and I didn't like being left alone with my thoughts. Robert let himself into the kitchen without knocking. I wasn't sure I heard him correctly when he said that Alcander wanted to see me in his study. Never in all my life had the man requested my presence alone in front of him. Well, he'd have me exactly as he made me. I wiped my hands on my apron, adding streaks of red to the mess that was already there, and tied it even tighter around my waist. Robert led the way into the main house, leaving me at the door to Alcander's study. Inside, my father sat with the barest hint of a smile on his face. His eyes narrowed when I entered, and I knew that this time I had not been called in to clear away dishes. "Do you think I'm stupid?" He leaned back in his chair. It was the casualness with which he asked the question that set my hair on end. "Sir? You think you're crafty, don't you?" I clenched my damp apron in my hands, but the deer's blood could not protect me from what Alcander said next. "Did you think I wouldn't know you went to the Vale?" I opened my mouth and closed it without saying anything. Did Annabelle betray me? Was her kindness just an act? Or was it Siobhan who realized I'd been gone too long? "You rode back into the ruins like you were queen of the damn place. I didn't even need Robert to tell me what you were doing. I could see it myself. Just who do you think you are?" I wanted to slap myself. I had been so wrapped up in what I learned at the Vale that I didn't even think of making it look like Jack and I were coming from separate places when we got back from the ruins. I felt like I was breathing through a pinhole. Darkness swam in the corners of the room. This was it, the punishment I thought I had escaped. I would be relegated to the kitchen house forever, unable to leave even to go to the market. Or Alcander would take his punishment out on Jack. It would be especially cruel to leave me without my greatest ally in the house. At least I knew Alcander wouldn't put me in the room with no windows. Izella's library was a room he would rather have sealed shut forever. Alcander sat up. He was dressed for the ball, clad in a dark green tunic with bronze detailing. His finery next to my serving clothes, my hands and apron crusted with his dinner, made me feel like a piece of dirt he might brush away with his hand. And brush was exactly what he intended to do. He repeated, "I said, who do you think you are?" "I'm Lady Izella's daughter." I stared at him, refusing to break eye contact. Alcander slammed his fist down at the table. His mask was off. "You would do well to remember that you are my daughter, too. As both your father and your lord, I can do with you what I please. You will leave the rooms in 1 week's time. A carriage will take you to the fall, where you will be married to Sir Reginald's valet." It was all I could do to stay there in the room with him. The fall was the northernmost province in the mountains of Calendaria, and the furthest one from the ruins. It would have taken Alcander the entire fortnight since I returned from the Vale to make this arrangement, with all the messages that would have needed to go back and forth. By marrying me off to a valet in the fall, Alcander was not only relegating me to a place as far from the ruins as he could, he was also sentencing me to a life of servitude. At the ruins, there was a slim chance that something might change. The moment I became the wife of a servant I didn't even know, any chance of getting the life and title Alcander owed me would vanish. "No," I said. I won't go." Alcander leaned towards me. "You will be on that carriage if I have to put you on it myself. I can't stand to look at you for a moment longer. We're done here." He walked out of the room, leaving me alone. Every bone in my body said to run, to grab Honeycomb and ride far away so that while I wouldn't be in the rooms anymore, I would still have control of my fate. But my feet were frozen in place. I gasped ragged breaths as I tilted my head up to the ceiling, where I saw the hollow moon shining down on me between the tree branches. I was right back where I was when I was 12, standing on a path I couldn't traverse alone. I wanted to flee. I wanted to stay. I wanted home, and all I knew was that the fall would never be it. Without realizing it, I had walked back into the hallway. I had almost reached the door to get outside when I heard my name being called. I stopped in my tracks, feeling like a piece of twine being pulled from both ends. My middle was fraying. "Eleanor!" Portia's voice thundered off the walls. I closed my eyes. I would not go to her. I would get out of the main house, go somewhere, anywhere. Portia clacked across the floor with steps as urgent and even as Siobhan's metronome. When I opened my eyes, I found that she had come to me. With me, now. She swept down the hall in a mass of green satin and gold lace, looking back to make sure I followed. When she saw that I wasn't moving, she came back, grabbed my wrist, and yanked. I didn't budge. "Eleanor," she snarled, like I was an animal that had displeased her. "Get." I gave up. I got. I followed her to the dressing room where Siobhan and Annabelle were finishing their preparations for the ball. Annabelle sat in front of the mirror, sticking pins in her hair, which was bound up in a series of shining curls. Her excitement was a stark contrast to Siobhan's expression as she paced back and forth, pinching her cheeks to get more color into a complexion that was white with nerves. Every few seconds, she stopped in front of the mirror to look over Annabelle's head and check her face. Even in her nervous state, she looked stunning in her jade green dress. The gold and emerald necklace that I bought at the market was looped around her wrist. "Give it," Portia said. Siobhan threw the necklace at her and continued to pace. "Imbecile!" Annabelle turned around, alarmed, as Portia thrust the necklace in my face. "What do you have to say for yourself?" I had nothing to say. "It's glass." She dashed the necklace against the floor where it broke into pieces. Beads scattered across the room and into the fireplace. Annabelle jumped up from her seat. "Mother!" Portia stood nose to nose with me, speaking in a low voice that only I could hear. "I should have known that you would try to sabotage this, Eleanor. It's in your blood." "Nora?" I wheeled around. Jack stood in the doorway, staring at the broken glass on the floor. "What happened?" My lips twisted into a smile. I tightened my grip on the knife. "I'm going to the ball." Thank you.
Matthew is the man with a million stories in his mind. He has had 4 short stories published and has many more he wishes to publish.
This is the opening chapter of my science fiction novel, Human. 5 million AD. The cattle was sleeping, except for number 5000, who was looking at its hands. Fear caused its hands to shake. 5000 had discovered that it existed and that it was somehow different from the rest of the cattle. It knew nothing would ever be the same. It would never be able to go back. It would never be able to be one of the cattle again. 5000, like all the other cattle, had a number on its right arm that designated its place in the herd. The other cattle did not notice the numbers on their arms. They did not notice anything. 5000 had noticed but did not know why. What had made it realize that it existed? Now that 5000 found itself with a mind, it started to wonder about everything. Why were the cattle exposed to sunlight every day? At the same time, the ceiling opened up and gave them a glimpse of the world above. 5000 could feel the sun give it strength. It began to wonder what was on the surface. After the exposure, the cattle received water directly from a machine into their arms through small plastic tubes. The cattle's skin was made of a black leathery substance, and they had no human features nor genders. They were upright, had 2 arms and 2 legs, but did not resemble humans in any other way. What could pass as eyes and ears were underneath their leathery covering. Their senses were honed for the dark. The cattle slept standing up in rows. 5000 noticed that it would sometimes dream, although its dreams were only memories of its life. For a while, 5000 could not tell the difference between dreams and reality. Now 5000 could, and that made it ask itself more questions. Why did it spend all its time killing the rats? Why did it exist? Surely there had to be a world above where it could see the sky all the time, not just once a day. What was outside? The cattle were vermin cleaners. Their whole purpose in life was to catch giant rats and kill them with either their bare hands or crude pieces of scrap metal they made into spears. The cattle were not entrusted with weapons. They were not entrusted with anything. The machines that now held dominion over a planet once called Earth created them. By the year 5 million AD, humanity was long gone. However, their DNA still existed, and the machines had used that DNA to create the cattle.
Our next reader is Michael Fisher. Michael Fisher is not really a writer, but he kind of wants to be when he grows up. He's written about theater, Findy.com, about TV for the Broad Street Review, and all sorts of stuff for the Nitpick.com. He lives in New Jersey. Michael will be reading from his critical memoir, The Screen: Essays from the Intersection of Movies and Life, which he completed with Amy Punt's long-distance support.
What I've learned from my chronic anxiety is that revelations and epiphanies are good for drama. They happen in the movies, but they generally don't happen in real life. And even when they do, they don't enforce the sort of blanket life change that drama would like us to believe they're capable of. We're asked to believe that in movies, the one big moment of clarity will come to define all the moments for the character that come after it, assuming after the credits roll. That simply isn't how the anxious mind works. The anxious mind moves from moment to moment with trepidation, always in danger of being seized by the terror. It can't be sorted out with golden proverbs, with snippets of pop wisdom. Philosophy is no help because anxiety takes place in the small in-between moments of life. In these moments, moments of fear, of terror, occasional flashes of panic in which I'm hyper-aware of death's absoluteness, the void is my only friend. I'd love to say that some period when I was dealing with this was my dark period, full of fear and panic, and that all that changed when I met a girl or saw a meme or had a moment of clarity. But it can never be as simple as that. Settling into adulthood has made it easier to be comfortable, easier to find moments in which death and disease are completely shut out of my mind, but the terror is periodic. It leaves me alone for a little while, sometimes for several months even, and then one day I wake up with a cold, or I find myself seized by stress and irritation, or maybe it's just too damn quiet in the house and those nasty thoughts become audible again. I'll swipe around the internet for hours trying to figure out what might be causing this dull pain in my back. It's not so very painful, but it's there, and what is it doing there? Why in that spot? Why dull and not sharp? What could explain it? My patient, long-suffering girlfriend tells me to calm down, it's just a knot. But see, I rub up against the corner of a wall for 15 minutes a day, and it's still there, so it must be something worse, right? I won't take pain relievers because the pain isn't my problem. The pain isn't what's bothering me. It's the source of the pain, or rather not knowing the source of the pain. What's going on in there? Is it radiating to my chest, or am I just imagining it? If it's radiating to my chest, then it must be a lung tumor swollen to such an immense girth that it's pressing up against both sides of my body. And Googling back pain upper left side yields diagnoses as varied as a muscle pull, gallbladder disease, cancer, and poor posture. So what I do is I look for any non-cancer conditions that I might have and try my best to convince myself that it's one of those instead of the C word. It's okay, I tell myself. The back pain is probably from your terrible posture. You sit at a desk all day, and like the other cretins of your generation, you spend half your life with your neck bent like a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal to look at your phone. Of course you're putting a strain on your upper back, you idiot. How silly to get so worked up about it. But then I become hyper-aware of my posture. I start sitting bolt upright at my desk, and I even prop my computer monitor on top of a couple of unopened reams of white copy paper so I don't have to incline my head in the slightest to see the screen. I even start holding my phone at eye level when I'm sitting on the train, which almost certainly makes the other passengers uncomfortable because it must look like I'm constantly taking a picture of the back of the head of whoever's sitting in front of me. But fuck it, I must fix my posture, goddammit. I do yoga. I roll around on the floor with a tennis ball pressed up against the ghastly knot day after day after day, and nothing fucking happens. Now, every time I stand at the kitchen sink doing dishes, I can feel the thing poking me, as if purposefully reminding me that it's still in there, that it's not going anywhere, that it's going to grow bigger and bigger, and it's going to press on me until I can't breathe, and with its malignant, murdering, metastasizing cells, it's going to slowly draw the breath out of my body as it drags me into the void. And all I can think about is how finite everything is, and how nothing lasts, and all the simple joys I get from hanging out with my girlfriend and going to the movies and watching football with my friends, those are all lies. They're just distractions from the infinite nothingness which awaits us all. Moments that will pass out of this world like shadows and will leave us nothing to cling to. They won't make dying any easier, which means they can't make the burden of living any lighter, which means they actually make it heavier by giving us things that we're sure to desperately miss once we're face to face with the end, which for me is almost certainly nigh because this fucking thing in my back will not go away. Why won't it go away? So it's no fun, really. To those of us who live with the terror and who see themselves only in proximity to the void, we can't really enjoy life. We can't really enjoy anything properly. One moment I'm having a nice time, and the next there's this pain in my back that can't be explained. And in that moment, life freezes. I can't go to the doctor because I convince myself that the worst isn't real until the man in the white coat says so. Yet I can't stop the panic because to do so would be to live in denial, which is stupid, right? I can't turn it off, not for long. I used to think that an epiphany was all I needed, that an epiphany one day would save me. Now I think I've just seen too many movies. Thank you.
Aaron Kelly's debut middle-grade novel, Blackbird Flies, was released by HarperCollins last year and received the Golden Kite Honor Award, ALA Notable Book Award, and is currently longlisted for the Pat Conroy Southern Book Prize. Her second novel, The Land of Forgotten Girls, released in March and was named one of the best books of the year by Booklist. In 2014, she released Her Name Was Fidela, a short story collection. Tonight she'll be reading from her thesis novel, Hello Universe.
Of all the treats in the entire world, celery sticks, baby carrots, orange slices, Gulliver liked dandelions best. It took him less than 5 seconds to eat an entire stem, and then he'd root around for more. For Gulliver, dandelions were a rare delicacy. For humans, they were noxious weeds that needed to stop growing, but grow they did. Dandelions were everywhere in Virgil's neighborhood. They sprouted from the cracks in the sidewalk, leaned against rusty fence posts, sneaked into well-manicured lawns. Virgil plucked them habitually, like an explorer searching for gems. By the time he reached the woods, his left pocket was stuffed with them. He could have stuffed the other pocket too, but he was saving those for the stones. He wasn't allowed to explore the woods alone. The trees were thick in some places, and sparse in others. Flowers grew intermittently, A patch of iris here, a colony of dandelions there. Lola was convinced the woods teemed with snakes, but Virgil was certain he could find 5 stones here, and not just any stones, but the best stones his town had to offer. He found 2 right away, just like that, just a few feet into the woods. Deeper in, the sounds of the neighborhood faded away, and he found another. He was so focused on looking down, surveying the ground with his eyes, that he barely noticed the ominous rustling sound behind him. But when he heard the shuffle of feet, he jerked around, heart pounding, and stood very, very still. If there's one thing he knew, it was that you had to stay still when faced with forest beasts. Otherwise, you could become their supper. He didn't see anything, but he was certain he heard something, and it wasn't just the blowing of the wind or the falling of a twig. Someone or something was moving nearby. "Hello?" Virgil said quietly, like a croak. He thought he heard something. A growl, a snort? He suddenly got the idea that there was a rhinoceros on the other side of the trees, pawing its front hoof in the dirt, bowing its head, steadying its horn, ready to charge. He imagined himself being flung into the air and landing on the thick gray skin of the giant beast before being trampled. One of Lola's old ghost stories popped into his head, too. She said there was once a man who told all his secrets to the trees, and after he died, the trees whispered them to anyone who passed by. Maybe it wasn't a rhinoceros, but a bunch of old trees who were ready to tell the secrets of the dead. He wondered so deeply that he didn't hear the other shuffling sound, this time approaching from behind. He barely noticed until it was only a few feet away, heavy and breathing. "Hey, retard." Virgil turned around, startled. Chet Boland's meaty face was a light shade of red, like it was ready to burst. "What are you doing out here all by yourself? You lost your mommy?" It occurred to Virgil that the bull was also out here by himself, but he wasn't about to point that out. Instead, Virgil said nothing. He stood there, one pocket full of stones and the other full of dandelions, feeling very dumb, like someone had lifted him out of one story and placed him in another, in these unfamiliar woods, in this unfamiliar situation, alone with the bull, who was carrying a pillowcase. Virgil wondered what the pillowcase was for, and in the space of about 3 seconds he thought of a handful of terrifying scenarios. The bull would smother him with it. He was using it to carry the bodies of dead animals. He was going to capture animals, smother them, and then carry their dead bodies. And Chet wasn't just carrying a pillowcase. He was also wearing a Chicago Bulls t-shirt. "Beware the color red," his Lola had said. Suddenly, the rhinoceros didn't seem so bad. "What's the matter?" the bull said. "Oh yeah, I forgot. You don't know how to talk. You're a retard. I saw you going into that retard all the class all the time. What goes on in there anyway? A bunch of kids wetting their pants?" In addition to being afraid of the dark, carrying a guinea pig in his backpack, and stuffing his pockets full of dandelions and rocks, Virgil had another secret. He weighed only 76 pounds, and even though he pretended to be 5 feet tall, he was actually 4'10". Virgil wasn't sure how much the bull weighed or how tall he was, but he certainly weighed more than 76 pounds. "You really are stupid, huh?" the bull said. His eyes shifted to Virgil's backpack. Chet took a step forward and Virgil took a step back, which the bull thought was hilarious because he immediately broke out into peals of laughter before ripping Virgil's backpack off his shoulders with such force that Virgil actually spun, and hit the ground with a numbing whack that shot from the palms of his hands to his shoulders. The bull took off like a bullet. Virgil pushed himself up and ran after him, saying, "No, no," in the loudest voice he could manage without choking. "Gulliver, Gulliver," he cried, or maybe he only said it in his head, he wasn't sure. The bull darted between the trees, not laughing anymore, just running, with Virgil's backpack in his hands. A million horrifying images blazed through Virgil's mind. The bull tearing Gulliver in two, feeding him to a pit of lions, picking him up and tossing him into the trees. Which is why he didn't feel any better when the bull finally stopped running and turned to face him, his cheeks an even deeper shade of red, and his neck and hairline glistening. Virgil waited for him to open the backpack, discover Gulliver, and destroy him. Instead, the bull took a giant step back, grinned evilly, and turned toward a stumpy tower that Virgil had never noticed before. It was an old well. With 2 hefty shoves, the bull pushed the cover of the well aside and dangled the backpack over the now open hole. "Say bye-bye to your stuff, retardo," he said. Chet let go, and the bag fell into the dark, gaping well, so far down that Virgil didn't even hear it land. "I guess you'll have to get new books, pansy boy," the bull said, his smile widening. "Not that you need them anyway, since you probably don't know how to read." The bull wiped his hands on the front of his jeans as if he'd just finished a dirty, dirty deed, which he had, and then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the woods and leaving Virgil alone.
Donna has 2 daughters, Jennifer and Maggie. She moved to Philadelphia from the Midwest. She has 2 masters in theater and playwriting, but her passion for poetry led her to the creative writing program at Rosemont College. While here, she has published poems in Philadelphia Poets, had the chance to teach intro to acting, enjoyed and learned from the teachers and poets of Rosemont, yay Rosemont, and has written her first collection of poetry. Blondie made Dagwood a sandwich, then went to a poetry reading.
I'm Tiffany, a newscaster for public TV. I live in the heartland in Indiana City and am obsessed by poetry, politics, and night and possessed like Claire and old Louise. They live up Sinclair Street near me. Our neighborhood's a diverse collection of singles and married love couples, of families who rent or buy homes lined up in rows on an interstate we fought against, rooted through us. Our neighborhood has hard men and kind men and women whistled at called sluts. We have our share of us. And when music plays us at night, women walk free, but even them are careful to walk only on lit streets, busy streets, careful at night to put our cracked pumpkin smiles on. Our not too wide smiling says, watch out. Says some sluts go to meetings, meet friends, walk to a movie, buy a CD, do errands, buy eggs. We have to use the street, have the right to walk it at night. But night streets in the city get black. Even in the heartland it gets dark. Elkin's Corner Market closes and Donuts by Desiree. And if bars sing loud into night, women walk careful, single mothers, working women who walk alone, jump at sound, scared. I report the news, and I know this warm, friendly place, oranged up by fall, this street whose leaves are crunch-walked, kick cheerful, each day changes at night, is dead silent, and women walk with their cell phones out. But tonight there's a reading, and October's orbed up, pumpkins, light porches, litter steps, shine hard next to houses emptied and fenced off, boarded up houses, how broken, how homes lost, neighbors relocated for urban renewal, for high-cost new builds near 1-story, 2-story wood homes earned slow in the 50s. Homes, townhouses tower over, soar near leaf raking and leaf piles and early evening laughter. Our streets are dense with leaves. Fall has fallen, and tonight we shuffle down the streets to Louise's. Been trying not to get pregnant since 1800 BC. 1800 BC! Before Jesus Christ, in Egypt, China, everywhere. She asked me if I had any questions, but I didn't. I hadn't told anybody except Michael, and he said I shouldn't go. Said it's not natural, not the right thing to do. I was afraid to tell Mama. She'd tell Daddy, but of course I had to because she had to look after Marianne and Michael Jr. I've been thinking about Margaret Sanger a lot this week. 2 of my babies died, you know. Allison was 3 months old, and I had that little boy for 4 days. Only 4. And 5 miscarriages in between. Got real sick after the last one. I'm tired. Don't want to do it anymore. So I asked my neighbor, was she interested in going? Maybe we could sit together in Mrs. Wise's car on the drive up. The room hummed. A few started to clap, but Claire raised her hand for quiet and never looked back, and I joined Beth by the door, her petitions laid out for Amnesty International. Pulled out more brochures from her purse, spread the trifold plea strategically on Louise's desk, and I whispered, you got something to read, Beth? She glanced up, rifled through her jeans, said, right here. Waved the found poem at me, preoccupied. She breathed hard and fast, and as her heft rumbled past, she pointed and talked, but as she strode by, stopped, leaned in, don't forget to sign, and belted out to the crowd, this is a poem I wrote last week, prompted by the news. And our city councilwoman, in a flurry but at ease, rubbed a blur from her glasses, pulled off her fleece, stopped, sternly focused, ready to read. So anyway, endless poem.